It's Bill. This is the Late to Grid podcast. I am back in the Atomic Autosports studio. And in this episode, I talk with Matt Busby from Thunderhill Raceway. And guess what? He talks about how to get started in racing, whether you're already in racing or you want to get started in racing, and also the business side of racing. This is a must listen to. Plus, we hit on the future of racing, how he sees it from a venue track operator perspective, and we talk about a lot more. Let's throw the green flag on this episode. It's Bill with the Late to Grid podcast. You are back in the Atomic Autosports studio, and I'm bringing you another great discussion of someone that's involved in motorsports and has a great journey, and that's Matt Busby with Thunderhill Raceway. Matt has a great racing and motorsports background. He's a great business background in motorsports, and Matt, it is great to have you on.
Hey, thank you for having me very much. I'm excited to chat with you, and thank you again.
Yeah, so let me set this up for the listeners. So Matt and I got connected at PRI 2024, and it was Brandon Anderson, a mutual friend that Matt and I have. He told me, listen, I got a great guest for you on the podcast. And sometimes when I hear that, I'm like, oh, sure. But as we headed over to the business member lounge to meet you, Matt, you're standing with Rob Dahm, having a conversation, and Brandon and I walk over, and I'm like, all right, I knew immediately Matt is somebody I got to have on the podcast. If nothing else, a fellow Rotary guy. But then we had a discussion inside the lounge that was just awesome. So I'm glad we finally got this put together. Let's talk about Rotaries. We're going to start right there. What is your love affair with fast spinning Doritos inside of an engine?
Oh man. So I think I'm part of, and I think a lot of people are around my age. I'm 38. I'm part of the Gran Turismo generation, right? And so the 787B was one of the coolest things you could get in Gran Turismo, and it made all the right noises, and it looked cool, and it was around that time where sport compact car, super street, import tuner, all that kind of stuff was like the car culture that we were ingrained in. Yeah, we read Hot Rod and Carcraft and all that kind of stuff, but like those were the magazines that we really like got all of our information from. And so I just kind of been a bit of a contrarian my entire life, to where like, hey, if everybody's doing the LS thing, well, I can't do the LS thing because everybody's doing it, it just so happened to where, I grew up in Louisiana, and in Louisiana, you're actually allowed to get a job at 14. And so the day I was eligible, I went and got a job, and I started saving my money because there was an FC RX-7 right down the street from me that had been sitting for years and years and years. And the guy who owned it told me if I showed up with $1,000, he would sell it to me. And so, my whole mission for that entire year was to go out and buy that FC. And, since then, so we go out, we buy it, I earn the money, and I couldn't drive a manual, and like my mom was petrified of a 14-year-old driving it home because, insurance and all that. So she had to drive it home for me. Transmission blew up on the way home. Oh. And then it sat in my driveway for 6 months while I had to save up the money to get a new transmission and put it in and all that kind of fun stuff. But since then, I have owned 27 FC RX-7s. I've had 3 FDs, 2 FBs, and I'm on my first RX-8.
Oh my goodness. Of those, we're going to get the RX-8 in a minute because I just picked one up non-running, but now it's running. All those FCs and FDs, do you have any of them left?
I sold the last one I had an FD that sat at my mom's house in New Orleans for about a decade because I blew it up. And then, I've been moving around the country and doing a lot of stuff. And I didn't want to put any kind of like money or anything toward it. So it just sat at my mom's house. And then I guess, those things have gone obscene in value. And somebody offered me a bunch of money that I couldn't turn down. And but I'm pretty sure that there's a couple of FC RX-7s that are still technically mine that I don't have anymore. But, we strip for parts and maybe left somewhere. The RX-8's the only one left.
Oh, my goodness. And that's a caged car, right?
Yeah, actually, it's so back in the day before Grand Am and ALMS merged, the what's now the Michelin Pilot Challenge used to be called the Grand Am Coney Challenge, and this was an actual body in white. It has a VIN on it, but it was never registered. It's a Speed Source, who was the Mazda race team at the time, Speed Source Coney Challenge chassis. And like for extra nerd stuff, Tarzan Yamada, it's the car he drove at Daytona, in Grand Am. And it had changed hands through a few people, and a fella that works over at G Speed in Texas had the chassis, and he'd been sitting on it for a while, and we worked out a deal to where he actually sold me the car and delivered it to me from Texas to California. It was pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
So the car's got like pedigree and history, and I've completely ruined all of it. And but it's a really, really cool chassis.
Well, you're keeping it alive in some respects, because you're going to have it back on track. And you mentioned before it's at a shop. What do you haven't done?
So we originally it came to me with no engine, no transmission, and who had ever had it before me had a sequential in it, and they had done a lot of like really weird stuff under the car to accommodate that sequential transmission, obviously because it's a power plant frame car like the RX-7s and the Miatas and stuff like that. So we kind of looked at it as a bare chassis, almost like a tube chassis, like, hey, yeah, this is in the shape of an RX-8, but we can do whatever we want. And I really wanted to stick with a Rotary. It's always been kind of a dream of mine, obviously, to build that 10 tenths, Jurassic Park spared no expense kind of Rotary car. And so we ended up going with an e-production FC RX-7 engine. Nothing crazy, built to e-production standards, but hey, look, those are at this point they've been racing in SCCA since the 70s, and so there's a really tried and true. The guys who build them are really, really good at building them. They make a ton of power, and now we're converting it over into an AIM PDM. New max ECU to try to get all the unnecessary weight and all the unnecessary complication out of it. And so it's at a shop here in Sacramento called Magic Developed, and they're doing all the wiring, making the motor mounts, all that kind of fun stuff. I'm finally in a place in my life where I could afford to like drop a car off to somebody and say, yeah, just do it,
That's a good place to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what's the goal with that car? When do you think it'll be done? What'll be its first event?
Oh man, I've been doing this long enough to know better than to put a deadline on finished race cars. Hopefully, we're shaking it down by May. The original intention was to build it for GLTC to run with Grid Life. As Grid Life had a West Coast championship here at Thunderhill, Laguna Seca, and Willow Springs. This season, they announced that they're not coming back to Willow Springs with Thunderhill, and they're not doing the West Coast championship deal. So I'm kind of on the fence of where it's going to fit. We, as Thunderhill, are owned by the San Francisco region SCCA, and so there's a world where the car just gets kind of squeezed into STU and regionally STU, not nationally, because there's some bits on it that aren't going to be legal. And so I don't know.
Does it still have a dash?
Not anymore.
I thought you needed a dash in STU, or maybe that's a regional thing you can get around.
That's part of it. I guess if we're playing the rule book game, it just says you need a dash. It does not say that dash can't be made out of painter's tape.
If the rule book doesn't explicitly say it, so be it.
Yeah, I'll have somebody call me at tech. And if I'm honest, I think where I'm at with my racing and everything now, if I go out, take the green flag, race a good race, go to tech, and then just take a DQ because of something silly like that, I don't care.
All right, you're having fun. That's what it's about.
Yep.
That's great. Well, let's go way back and talk about the beginning of your motorsports journey. You mentioned earlier in the show that you grew up in Louisiana. It was some of your first exposure to motorsports was the IMSA events that were held. What track was that?
So in 90, 91, and I think 92, IMSA came to New Orleans and they did the Grand Prix of, I think they called it like the Mardi Gras Grand Prix the first year, and then it was the Grand Prix of New Orleans a couple of years after that. But it was not an actual racetrack. It was a street circuit on like Poydras and stuff like that around the Superdome. And so you raced around the Superdome, but it was really, really funny. If you go back and watch, I think YouTube has some footage from those races back in the day. It's New Orleans. New Orleans is not known for having glass smooth surfaces. and so you can see the Camel Lights prototypes literally hopping from piece of asphalt to piece of asphalt because the roads are so bad. They're just jumping from place to place. But no, we went to those races as a kid, and that was always really exciting. And my dad and then my stepdad were both kind of car people, and was always like I said, got a job really early, and was always around car magazines, car media, all that kind of stuff. Was really fortunate to get to do some really cool karting things as a kid, here and there. And that kind of blossomed into more and more opportunities where a friend let me drive his go-kart, and then he let me drive his go-kart a lot because he wasn't driving it. And then I got a go-kart and that kind of thing. So it kind of spiraled out of control really organically. Yeah.
And you guys raced those karts competitively?
We did. We primarily we tried a few different things. The go-karting, especially from a powertrain standpoint, has gone through a lot of iterations, especially since the mid 90s. But we primarily stayed in the Rotax ecosystem. I did a lot more Rotax racing when I started started working at NOLA. Obviously, we had a nicest race or kart track in the country, and the kart shop was there, the storage. And so you punch out, you literally go into the kart shop, you pull your kart, off the rack, put it on the ground, warm it up, go out, rip some laps, put it away, go home every day. It was pretty neat. Had some competitive races, did some national racing, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's so fun. Do you ever hop in the car? Do you guys have anything like that at Thunderhill?
No, not anymore. And that was pre-marriage, so maybe 100, 125 pounds ago. So yeah, I don't know how me and a go-kart would go after that. But being around that community and that community in New Orleans was really small. It got me hey, you're pretty good at that. Do you want to do some laps in my Formula Ford? Yes, of course I do. And it kind of snowballed into, I tried an old Reynard Formula Ford, and it was a lot of fun. And then me and my stepdad went out and found one and bought it and started putting it back together, and pretty unsuccessfully tried to race it, but it was a lot of fun.
Oh man, how long did you have that Formula Ford?
We probably kept that car for 2 years, and then got into a Formula Mazda. Found a pretty good deal on a wrecked Formula Mazda, did a few regional races with that, and then got into a wrecked Star Mazda and did a few races in that. And it was just one of those things where we just kept accidentally upgrading and then having the same epiphany of, man, this is way more expensive than we thought it was going to be, but at least we're having fun.
So most people do something with fenders before they get into open wheel stuff. Most, not all. So what drew you to? Was it just the invitation on the Formula Ford? What'd you like about open wheel?
It was just the opportunity. That was what was available to me. I actually I didn't do my first autocross run. I didn't autocross until I was 20. I didn't get to do that. I'm still very bad at that. But no, it was not a decision or a choice or anything like that. It was purely opportunity. Hey, you want to drive this? Sure.
Oh, that's great. Let's talk a little bit about how you made the transition. So you're into this motorsport stuff, and you're driving, you're having a good time, getting the adrenaline. When did the light bulb go off to say, maybe I can have a career in this industry? How did that all come about?
I think part of me, being around the race cars and being around all of those things, I was really one track minded, and that's what I wanted to do. And not from a discipline or a resolve place, but from like that really like from a kid place where like, no, I love this. I don't want to do anything but this. So I did had a few mechanics jobs. I did a few semesters at LSU. I majored in physics because I was like, oh yeah, I want to be an aerodynamicist, or I want to be a chassis engineer or something like that. Got a job as a dealership mechanic and bounced around to a couple of dealerships while I was going to school. Ended up having like there was a period there where I was in school and had 3 jobs, and it was kind of a nightmare. But throughout that whole thing, it was really focused and like this is the only thing I want to do. Right about my second or third year of college, I got an opportunity with my uncle to start a business doing IT work. And, it was basic desktop support, Exchange servers, boring stuff, but it paid particularly well. And, one of the jobs that we got, we were one of the contractors that networked all of the cleanup sites for the BP oil spill. And, I'm 19 or 20 years old and I'm making $160 an hour. It's pretty awesome. And so I kind of dropped out of like, it was making so much money that, hey, I dropped out of school. I kind of took a break from the race car thing to focus on just trying to make money so I could go back and do the race car thing the right way. And right about the time that the BP oil spill job was ending, they were building, Laney Schwess was building NOLA Motorsports Park in Avondale in New Orleans. And they put out a request for somebody to come build their network, phone systems, camera systems, the whole kit and caboodle, working with a guy named Wes Ratcliffe, who really crazy intelligent guy. He was the chief technical officer for USAC up until recently, doing a lot of really cool stuff with timing and scoring and live streams and all that kind of stuff. But I put the bid together and we got the bid, spent a tremendous amount of that man's money. It was very much, he wanted the best of everything and he got the best of everything. At the end of it, it was, okay, well, who do I train on how this stuff works? Because it wasn't, it's not just like a home router where like, if it doesn't work, you just go and plug it for 30 seconds and plug it back in. Like this was layer 3, really complex networking. We had like 10 VLANs. And they're like, yeah, we don't really have that guy. Do you want to be that guy? We'll pay you $15 an hour. That's a pretty big pay cut, but yeah, absolutely. This is a no-brainer. I want to do this. And, I think if I would have talked through it with my fiance or wife, I don't know if we were married at the time. No, we were not married at the time. Girlfriend at the time. If me and Courtney would have like had the discussion about the reality of what this was, I probably wouldn't have done it. But yeah, I took a big pay cut, kind of shuttered the IT business and started working full time as the IT guy at NOLA, and that evolved into doing a lot more operational stuff. Helping with the NASA region there because NOLA had their own NASA region, the kart series. It just kind of snowballed into doing a little bit of everything.
So folks, I want you to listen to that. So he said yes to a job that didn't pay anywhere near what he was making, but he saw the opportunity and look where he is now. He's had tons of RX-7s. That's the big takeaway. But no, he's worked at different racetracks. He's a leader in the industry. He gets geeked up about asphalt configurations and mixes. That I think it says a lot when you're presented with an opportunity. You could have said yes or no, and you had a hunch, something in your gut said, this is probably going to lead to somewhere else I want to be. Yeah, that's really cool.
It was very much, at the time, NOLA was still, I came in right as they started pouring asphalt in certain areas. But I'm not sure the exact number, but the rumor was, or the vibe was like, hey, Laney spent $80-90 million on that facility. Like this was, hey, I'd be crazy not to be a part of this. And this is the exact industry I want to work in. And oh my gosh, there's race cars everywhere and go-karts and everything like that. And, being young and dumb, I just jumped on it. And that's not to say that there weren't, 10, 12 years of, really hard work. You got to earn it. But I don't regret it in the slightest.
That's great. So I eventually do want to talk about your on-track experience and activities and things like that. But since we're talking about the business side of motorsports, let's continue there. So how long were you at NOLA?
I was at NOLA. For about 4 years, 5 years, something like that. Yeah.
And then you went to NCM?
Correct. So the original GM at NOLA Motorsports Park was a guy named Mitch Wright. Mitch has done a whole lot of really cool things in the industry. He's kind of road racing royalty in this country as far as I'm concerned. Raced Trans Am in the 80s in the heyday, for the Archer brothers, and was the head of SCCA Pro during the 90s through the World Challenge glory years. And then he was part of the group that built Miller, part of the group that built NOLA. I worked for him at NOLA. And then he got recruited to go up and help the National Corvette Museum build their racetrack. And, we had just gotten done with the Rotax Grand Finals and we're getting geared up for IndyCar at NOLA. And I was admittedly pretty burned out, and there were some things that were going on there that I just needed time away from it. And so I kind of put me and my wife at the time, or my girlfriend at the time, in a position where, like, all right, I'm just not going to work for 6 months. I need a break. I'm burnt out. And then, like, 3 days later, Mitch calls me and says, "Hey, do you want to come interview? I need an operations manager up here." Well, yeah, okay. And so went up, interviewed with them, and we had a 6-month-old son. My son was 6 months old, and, like, again, just as a dumb person, like, yeah, sure, we'll move across country where we don't have any family on this dream of being in motorsports.
Yeah. So how long were you at NCM, and what did you end up doing right before you left there?
Sure. So I was there for 10 years. I was operations manager and then promoted to general manager. That place is pretty dynamic, where it's not like a lot of traditional racetracks where, like here at Thunderhill, we have different elements of the business, but we're a rental company, right? We have these facilities. We rent the facility to different clubs, organizations, and they come in and put on the programming. NCM was very different in that, hey, there was a rental aspect of it, a membership aspect of it. There's a driving club there. We had an entire stable of Corvettes that we did like experiential kind of like tourism type drives. We had a driving school with those cars. We had a kart facility. We ran NCM with I think there was like 5 of us that were full time there. So, you got really, really good at doing a little bit of everything. So there were days where I was, booking the racetrack in the morning, taking phone calls, trying to get track rental done. And then I'd move on to instructing in one of the Corvette programs. Oh crap, one of the tires went down. Now I got to go back to the shop and put a tire on while the students are eating lunch, throw the tire on, wash up, get back out there, do more instructing, then come back in, clean the cars, put the cars away. Oh, now I've got a mountain of email. So it was 1,000 miles an hour for 10 years. And I loved it, honestly.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Sounds like a fast paced, lots to do, never a dull moment. So what made you go leave Kentucky, Midwest, and head all the way to the West Coast?
There's a few things that precipitated it, but primarily, I mean, Thunderhill is we're in our 32nd season here. The founder, with the San Francisco region, Dave Vodden, he built this big, incredible place. We're on 600 acres, 2 racetracks, 2 skid pads, mega profitable business. And, he's in his late 70s, and it was time for him to, go be a granddad and go play golf and do retired guy things. And so they had been, Thunderhill has been looking for somebody to take over for a few years. And, at PRI, kind of for a handful of years had really gotten to know Dave, and they asked if I would be interested in coming out and interviewing and about taking over as president and CEO. And My wife and I did, and we've always kind of liked. We've vacationed out in California, and it's so cool out here. That again, it was just this no-brainer where, hey, if we're going to take the next step in my career, my son William was 10 at the time. Like, hey, we're just on the cusp where if we do this now, he is young enough to where he can bounce back. If we wait any further, he's too old, and it'd be kind of a disservice to him. So we made the decision, hey, this is the last time we're doing this. We're going across the country, and honestly, this is the best move we could have made. Couldn't be happier, and Thunderhill is an incredible community.
That's awesome. So you've worked at 3 different tracks. You've seen a lot. What's the craziest thing you've seen during a track day or event?
Whew. Man, there's been a lot of things. Mini bike jousting midnight with the motorcycle race. Some of the like pro racers, people with name recognition got pretty hammered and got some pool cues out, and were doing jousting in the paddock on mini bikes. Had to shut that down. Have to the fun police, but it was something to see at the time. We had a pretty interesting incident at NCM where if you've driven NCM, you know that turn 6 you can go right, which is the track direction, or you can go left, which is a little cutoff road that takes you over to the 14-15 area. And we had somebody during a hot session take the left and then try to turn counter down 14, which is tabletop, and that's like 130 mile an hour, like blind crest. And I was really proud with our whole crew, like our corner worker crew, our safety crew. Everybody like immediately recognized how insane what was happening and shut it down and everything like that. But the poor fellow who did it had his girlfriend in the car, and his girlfriend, like, we were red flagged for like 20 minutes because his girlfriend gets out of the car with her helmet on and just walks all the way from 14 into the paddock and says, "I need somebody to call me an Uber. I am not going home with that man."
Oh, okay, my goodness. That is very crazy.
We've at another one at Kentucky, we pulled a pretty sizable and expensive John Deere lawnmower out of a sinkhole. That was on Thanksgiving Day. That was pretty interesting. There's been a lot. The tornado at NCM, I mean, completely destroyed that entire facility, and I was really proud with all the people that were there with us that, we were back up and running, I think 6-7 weeks after the tornado. And, it wasn't perfect, but I was really proud to get all that going and to see the resiliency of people and the community and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. I asked you previously, what's the best motorsports advice you received? And your response was, never forget how motorsports is paid. In 2 sentences, what does that mean?
P1 pays the same entry fee as P50. P50 knows he's not going to win. He's the person you take care of, not P1. Don't forget who pays the bills.
Yes. I like that. So we talked a lot about the business side of what you're doing. Let's talk about getting behind the wheel. How, after doing all that open wheel stuff in the Mazdas and the Fords, did you still get an opportunity to get out on track?
Yes, that's one of the main perks. If anybody doesn't work in motorsports and wants to, fair warning, the pay is abysmal. But there are perks to it that are pretty undeniable, and that is, at most places, you have unfettered track access. And so, you get the opportunity to be on track as often as, hey, if you're not busy or if there's an opportunity to drive, like, you're there. Yeah, go drive. And so, being able to, especially once I started working at NOLA, where, we ended up on the racetrack 3-4 times a week in something. And it's, you get pretty spoiled, being able to do that,
Have you ever done a Zoom call or a conference call while on track?
Yes, multiple times.
Now that is really cool. I could get into that.
Yeah, there's a lot of conference calls happen, especially at NCM, where like, we did our Corvette program, and a lot of those were lead follow. So, you're in the lead car, it's helmet off because you're not going over highway speeds, and it's, 4 laps, so 3 times by start finish. But contrary to what most people think, getting, randos into Corvettes, the problems that you have from a program standpoint is not people getting into them and driving crazy or trying to go too fast. Yeah, every once in a while there's that person that tries to do that, but overwhelmingly, especially if you're trying to hit a schedule, the problem that you have is you get these people in these cars and they won't go over 30 miles an hour. And so 4 laps at 30 miles an hour on NCM takes half an hour. And so like, hey, you can't stop the laps early because you have a call. Nope, we're going to start the call in the car. And, yeah, did a lot of stuff that way.
Oh, man, that's fun. So, I don't know, let's just take 2025. Have you been on track at all?
2025, no, not yet. I am supposed to. Actually today we've got Matt Field here with his new C8 drift car and his C6 Pro car. They're getting prepped for Long Beach, and I'm supposed to be getting in one of those cars today. But as far as driving, no. There's a few years ago, I had this kind of epiphany moment that like, even though there are some cars that I am invited, like I still get invited to drive other people's stuff all the time. And there are some of those cars that like, if the worst happened and I had to buy that car because I did something stupid, I could. I don't want to take anybody's risk. I don't want to pay for anybody's race car. So I've kind of gotten really weird about driving other people's stuff, just not because of other people, but just because, it's not worth the risk for me. I don't enjoy it that much anymore, like to risk somebody else's equipment.
Right. So being behind the wheels, what got you into this industry, and you haven't been on track a ton since then. We got the RX-8, which fingers crossed will be ready, first half of this year, get you behind the wheel. Does that 100% scratch the itch, or is there more stuff you need to do? Is there another car? Is there a rental, endurance racing, anything else?
I was very fortunate to be invited to co-drive with Hayward Wagner at Solo Nationals this past year. And that invitation has been extended again because he beat me. So as long as I keep losing to him, he'll keep inviting me to drive his car. And I plan on doing that.
That's proper etiquette when someone lets you co-drive.
Yeah, you always leave.
You gotta let him win
out there.
Yeah,
because that's exactly what I was doing for sure.
Sure.
There's a couple of deals. There's an endurance race coming up here where I've been invited to drive, and I'm kind of kicking around if the RX-8's not together, just to get some seat time and figure out the nuance of Thunderhill. I plan on doing it. But yeah, I think I'd prefer to do it in something that if I break it, I can kick it and walk away and not have to worry about it.
Yeah. So your region of the SCCA out there, do you guys have club race experience?
Oh, yeah. As far as the second largest region in the country, second to Central Florida region by 138 members, and we're going to close that gap this year. But we do 4 rounds, 4 regional races, so double regionals for those who've been doing SCCA races for a long time. 4 double regionals here at Thunderhill, 1 double regional at Laguna, and then a majors tour at Sonoma. And so it's a pretty full schedule, really, really good, strong. I mean, just at the regional races, we're talking 40 or 50 spec Racer Fords, 40 or 50 spec Miatas. It's really, really healthy.
Wow. That's great. So you've seen a lot of events across your history. What's the biggest mistake you see someone that's showing up, let's just say for a track day? What's the mistake you see most often?
I think it is the nature of this business, and it is the nature of the kind of people who are attracted to cars as a hobby, to try to do too much too quickly and try to overcompensate. The way I say it is like, nobody wants to go to the gym and be the 5-pound plank guy, right? That just gets on the machine and just is lifting real small. But we all started there. And I think the sooner you commit to that being the process, the faster you're going to progress. If you show up and like, you're comparing lap times on your first day, or you're worried about, shock rebound or anything like that, you're focused on the wrong things. Do the fundamentals, the step and throw, the get your butt down for a ground ball, get the fundamentals down, take the time to learn that. Everybody was there. Nobody's judging you. And it will pay dividends in the future.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you do see that quite a bit where people are, hey, before I came, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And you've only done 2 events before this? So, yeah, pace it out. And I think your advice is awesome in that just get out there, do it with what you have, and listen to what other people tell you. That's a big one.
Yeah, the other bit about this that I kind of try to temper stuff, we wrote a program at NCM called HPDI. So obviously like an HPDE, High Performance Drivers Education, or High Performance Drivers Event, depending on how you want to carve that up. But we did HPDI, so High Performance Drivers Introduction. So the joke was, okay, we're going to write an 8-hour on-track program for all the stuff that a bad instructor tries to fit in between the driver's meeting and your first session. We're going to spend an entire 8-hour day on that. And a lot of that was, hey, look, nobody wants to be the 5-pound plank guy, all that kind of fun stuff. But the one universal truth is there are fibs. There are fibs being told in the paddock more so than any other fish story I've ever heard. Oh yeah, I'm running 210s around NCM. Okay, dude, try to temper, anybody that's trying to do high water marks or benchmark you or bench race you or anything like that. Take every ounce of it with a grain of salt, and just focus on your thing.
Got it. Let's shift gears to balance, work-life balance. And you're a busy guy. You got a family. You got a Rotary, which always needs work.
Yeah.
What in the world were you thinking when you ran for city council?
That's a good question. I still don't know the answer to that question. Was
there a cause or something that you said, man, I want to fix this. I want to protect, I don't know if the city's near your track. You want to make sure that nobody's trying to kick the track out.
Yeah. So there's two aspects to this. First and foremost, I think it's the city of Willows and Thunderhill have a symbiotic relationship. We rely on the city of Willows for lodging and hotels and being a welcoming place for our customer base to come in. We are about 2.5 hours outside of the Bay, which is our primary market. And so there's always going to be a little bit of hey, if you want to go to Thunderhill, you have to plan around getting there and coming back. It's not like on the East Coast. The West Coast culture is so different, where like on the East Coast, me and a few friends, like on a whim, hey, do you want to drive 12 hours to Sebring? Yeah, man, let's go do that. That is not the culture here. And, of course, obviously there's some people who do that, but that's not the prevailing culture here. And so we need the town to be thriving for us to thrive. And the town, frankly, just like a lot of small municipalities all across the country, is not thriving. And so, wanting to be an advocate for the relationship, not obviously, Thunderhill is not in the city limits. So, that's the first question, is there's no conflict of interest or anything like that. Like, I can't vote on anything that affects Thunderhill. It is purely service. I believe in civil service and trying to help the community at large. And then the second thing is, not partisan politics or anything like that, but like politically, the trend of the continuing distrust in institutions is really worrying for me. And I think that that's going to hurt my kid. And so, hey, can I be part of rebuilding trust with our community and our institutions and be a good agent for growth and change and everything like that. So I don't know, there's a little bit of maybe a little bit of hubris in it. But I just want to help people,
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're doing it for the right reasons. So
I hope so.
Who knows? Maybe it'll be Matt Busby for president someday. We'll have racetracks everywhere.
Hard pass.
Let's talk a little bit about the industry that you're in, the motorsports industry. You rub elbows with a lot of folks like yourself. Where are venues headed? Where are tracks headed? What's the future of the industry?
It's a really good question. I think we're in my opinion, I think we're in a little bit of a transformative time in similar to the 90s. If folks remember, in the late 80s, early 90s, if you wanted to get on track, you didn't have all of the options that you do now. Like track access has just gotten so easy compared to what it used to be. You either had to do a Skippy school or an SCCA school, and that was pretty much it. But as track access, got more and more easy to get to, and all of these track day companies, HBD companies, we saw this huge transformation of the industry and the business and how this whole thing works. And so the idea that like if you're going to do racetrack things, you had to have the truck and the trailer and the race car, and it was a lifestyle, and you committed all your time to it and everything like that. The accessibility has led to people being able to consume this hobby much more casually. Hey, I bought a Corvette. I'm going to drive to an autocross. I'm going to drive, do my autocross, and I'm going to drive home. Oh, I can do that for time trials. Oh, I can do that for track days. And that scratches the itch. Has way become the norm versus the I want to go racing. That's actually been what we're seeing. That's kind of that path for folks is kind of in decline. And whether that be economic, logistic, or just from a pure content standpoint, wheel-to-wheel racing just isn't growing. It's going the other way, and some of the more casual things are getting bigger. And the next big transformative moment is the moment that I think the country is going to see, where we have this this age group of customers that have really held the industry up for 30 years that are transitioning out, right? They're getting older, they're selling race cars, they're doing grandparents things, all that kind of stuff. There's a concern that we're not replacing people at the rate that we're losing people. And so I think that from a facility standpoint, we have a big responsibility to make a really big leap in customer expectations from, hey, if you think about what a customer who's, say, in their late 50s or early 60s, what they expect from a racetrack versus somebody who's 25, what they expect from a facility when they show up is very, very different from, comfort, creature comforts, internet, live stream, all that kind of stuff. And for racetracks, that's a really big, we've been on programming that, hey, we don't need that. All those things are luxuries. And now we're all of a sudden like, no, these aren't luxuries anymore. If we want to stay competitive with skiing or golf or whatever other hobbies folks can do, no, we need this stuff right now. And so there's this big push toward creating additional value in facility investment. And I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it's going to be great for the industry. But right now, I think our economically, we're seeing a little bit of a dip in participation across the board. And so, hey, we're making all these investments while we're in a little bit of a lull. It's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Do you host a lot of your own events, or do you bring in organizers to do it, like a track day or an event?
We try to stay out of it. We do the test days before the SCCA weekends because those are, pretty turnkey. You put people in the classes, you take their money, and you show them where the racetrack is.
Yeah, they know what's going on.
Right. Mm-hmm. There's been very much the culture here at Thunderhill is we don't want to compete with our customers. So if I started an HBD company, I'm competing with the 16 HBD groups that rent the racetrack here, and that feels bad. So I'd rather work with those groups to set them up for success than do it myself. But that's not to say that some of the larger scale stuff, we've been kicking around doing some big kind of festival feel type things, just because I think that's kind of where the industry is going to head toward from a health standpoint. What we're noticing, at least right now in this moment of time, is the events that are seeing high participation are special. They're not like, oh, yeah, it's another track day. Come on out, show up. No, you're getting kind of meh turnout for those. But if hey, we're doing a car show and we're doing a concert and we're going to have barbecue and we got an open bar after hours and all that kind of stuff, those are the ones that are seeing 130, 140 paid. So we're probably going to be much more involved in the extra bits of that, but still rely on some of our partners to provide the on-track content.
Yeah. I've heard from some of the younger folks, matter of fact, a couple of my employees race, and they said they did their first Grid Life event, GLTC race, and said, Bill, you would not believe the difference in the paddock between, I'm not going to name the organization, but between that group and Grid Life. And it's like, this is where I want to be. And it wasn't one of the events where there's a concert and all this other stuff. It was a pit race event, but there was still a very positive vibe. It was a younger crowd, a more vibrant crowd. I think they did a meal or something. And I think it's great that you're ahead of the curve on this, realizing that, hey, if we're going to attract folks, this is the kind of stuff we need to be doing. And, NASCAR even looked at it at installing mufflers, because they know that the next generation of fan wants to sit and talk. Right?
Yeah,
they just want to be there.
They just want to be there, and I think that that's so right? Where it's going to sound a little reductionist, but like the things that happen on track are pretty much the same across all the organizations. Hey, we're going to go out there. We all kind of adhere to the same safety standards, all to the same driving standards, all that kind of stuff. So the on-track content is not where the special things happen. The special things happen in the paddock, and how you interact with your customers, what culture you have in the paddock. And yeah, I mean, Grid Life, Adam, Chris, and that whole crew, Abe, they've done such a great job in culture is the game. It's the on-track stuff's not the game. Culture is the game. And, there are some other organizations that I do think have lost their way in that a little bit. And yeah, very much so, to where getting people, making people feel like everybody wants them there. And that sounds pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised.
Yeah. I have just a couple questions left. So if someone's listening to this and says, all right, I want to be like Matt, how do they get started? How do they look for opportunities to get involved in the business?
So racetracks across the country, they're all hiring. I promise you, every racetrack is hiring. That's one of the big things. Every year at PRI, all the racetracks get together and we get into a room and we try to do some, kind of industry problem solving. We joke about it. The three things we are going to argue about every year are waivers, EVs, and drifting. But one aspect of our conversations every year also is corner workers. We can't get enough corner workers. So if you really want to get started, most places, it's not like the SCCA, where volunteering with the SCCA is great. It's a great way to get into it. The SCCA training tools that they've been putting out over the last year are phenomenal. But I go out, start flagging on the weekends, and then be annoying. Be annoying to the track manager, be annoying to the facilities people, be annoying to the gate people. Hey, do you need help? Hey, do you want some extra hands? Hey, can I come in on Wednesday? Be annoying and earworm your way into more things at the racetrack, and then just, be reliable and don't be allergic to work. And it's pretty natural. There's a pretty organic flow up at most racetracks. If you're not allergic to doing the work, you're going to go somewhere.
That's great advice. All right. Time trials. You're on the time trial committee now, right? Because you have so much free time.
Yeah.
Where do you see, and what's really cool, if folks don't know about time trial, and correct me if I'm wrong, all the organizations, I shouldn't say all, most of the organizations in the U.S. that put on time trial events are collaborating. They're working together to make sure there's streamlined rule sets and that, maybe calendars don't overlap. Where do you see the time trial programs headed in 2025?
It's a good question. I think I admittedly, I'm not as well versed on the GTA stuff, so I don't want to speak on their behalf or anything like that. But I think that they've been getting really good momentum over the last couple of years, and we're really excited to always see their brand around stuff. But the two organizations that I have the most experience with are obviously the SCCA and Grid Life, and I think the North American Time Attack Association or Time Attack Consortium or something like that, that NATA deal, is really cool in that coordination to make sure that there aren't clashes and everything like that. But I think the way Grid Life is going, with the changes that they made this year to where HPD is not at their events and they're really focusing on giving quality track time to the Time Attack community and then the GLTC and GLGT groups is really cool. But you're seeing this kind of separation where I think SCCA is doing a really good job of casting a wide net of, hey, you have a stone stock 2,000 mile ND Miata, come on out. We've got a class where you can be competitive, where Grid Life skews a little bit more toward the, hey, these are purpose built things for a job. And I think that's a good thing. There's obviously some overlap. The max and the unlimited max class and the unlimited class in SCCA overlaps really well with, depending on what you're in, street mod, track mod, and unlimited. Same with the street class to the tuner classes in SCCA. So there's some really good overlap to where if you're not, what we're noticing a lot of in our surveying is we're seeing less people chase series and more people stay inside their region. So, hey, I can have my RX-8 and it fits inside the max rules. Well, it also fits inside the Club TR rules where all I have to do is add a little bit of ballast and I can go do both of the things. And I think that is incredible for the community where we have this overlap to where it's not these siloed groups. Everybody's playing with everybody else and we get to build a much more rich community with a lot of depth. But I really like the SCCA methodology of having a place for everybody to play competitively.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I have one question left, but before I get there, is there anything you had hoped we talked about that we didn't?
Just, we're all in this together. I think that, there can become this adversarial thing of, participant to organizer to racetrack. And I'm here to tell you, because I've seen the movie a couple of times, the further, those three legs get away from each other, the worse everybody gets, right? So we have to find ways to communicate more effectively, be willing to compromise, and understand that, at the end of the day, don't forget where how the business gets paid for, and just communicate with each other.
That's good advice because we all need to exist in order to get on track. Yep. And if we start separating, the opportunities to get on track are going to get fewer and fewer. That's great insight, Matt. All right, final question: in your racing days, were you ever late to grid?
Oh God, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
My kind of guy.
The last one I can think of is Rotax, and I think it was the Pan American Challenge. There's like a big deal race, and I show up late because I was working and lost my driving suit, found my driving suit, and I jumped in so quickly, and on the tag carts, there's a little safety on and off switch. So it's like a master switch, but it's a 5-cent plastic thing. And where I had it mounted, I got into my cart so fast that I hit it with my foot and completely boogered it up. And so I'm late to grid and I'm running and I start freaking out because now my master switch won't work. And I start hollering and everything like that. And the cart guys come over and as the grid is leaving, we're hooking up this master switch and just wrapping it around the steering column just so we can get out for the session. And yeah, it was pretty fun. I actually had another one. I had a race at Eagles Canyon where I showed up 10 minutes late to the driver's meeting. They did not let me race that weekend.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. That's stiff penalty there.
Yeah.
So the lesson there is, folks, get to grid early. Well, Matt, it was great having you on the podcast. I really enjoy the discussion. You have an awesome journey, and I love where you are leading the industry, and I can't wait to watch where you take Thunderhill and then the greater racing community.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. I'm super flattered that anytime I get asked to do anything like this. It's pretty cool to talk to a community. This is such a niche thing, and as I've gotten older, my expertise has gotten so much more specific that finding people that are willing to listen to it is pretty fun.
It's great stuff.